Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. Please listen to this essay as you're driving along in your car, your truck, or in public transport. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the mass migration to Europe. Now, the statistics that the European Commission, the European Union, and the political hacks and goons pump out is designed to deceive and conceal the reality. And like all bureaucrats, they're expert at that. So they use various devices of redefinition and recategorizing, double definitions, double categorizing, double counting, double subtraction, and all sorts of artifices and devices and so on to really obscure the reality so that things appear nowhere near as bad as they are. So they can say, well, they're only coming for an education. What's wrong with that? Or, well, they're coming to work. We need people. We need these workers. The economy can't grow, and so on. And so all these people, they're engineers and doctors. They're all rocket scientists. They all have 100 PhDs each. So all these lies are thrown around to again conceal the actuality. So looking at there's a little bit over 4 million people came into the EU from third world countries in last year. Now, again, due to double counting, when I looked at the numbers, by the way, and it was fairly obvious that they were using double counting, double subtraction, half counting, all the things that I mentioned a moment ago. It actually, I think I would have to sit down for a whole day to go through the numbers and test them and go back and qualify with this and what about that then. So you'd need almost triple column accounting to be able to separate all the numbers. For example, in some cases they include Ukrainian refugees, but when they define another category, they don't, or they only say some of the Ukrainian refugees. When they're looking at family reunion, they'll say Ukrainians that came over then joined by other Ukrainians supposedly from the same family, but then they'll double count those and so on. And so obviously you really have to go through very, very carefully that again, the whole purpose of these numbers is to obscure, not to clarify. So anyway, last year, somewhere in the region of 4.5 million people supposedly came in, not including Ukrainians. So these are third world people. Now, approximately 45%, so close to 2 million, came in for work. Now, if you look at the categories of skill shortage or supposed or alleged skill shortage in Europe, which differs region to region, by the way, then why you would want illiterate third world peasants that are illiterate in their own language, let alone your language, how they would be helpful to the workforce is beyond me. And if you have that many jobs, let's assume on the other side of this equation, you've got that many jobs that are so low paid that it doesn't matter if someone is illiterate in there and any other language. That means, by the way, you can't give them any written instructions. Everything has to be verbal, which means you have to have an interpreter overseer to manage them. And so it's not that cheap in the overall scheme of things when you need one per 10 or 1 per 12 supervisory staff who can do the language interpreting, because you then got to pay them as well. So anyway, this idea that these people are all skilled is nonsense. It's clearly a blatant lie. Now, what some of them do, again, this doesn't include short-term work visas, which, again, as I highlight, the double counting and double subtraction, you have to really look carefully at what is a short-term work visa. Say someone you bring in from Romania to pick, vegetables in the farms, asparagus farming or something like that. You just bring in cheap peasants from Romania as a group. You stick them all in some crappy shed, and that's their accommodation. Then they do, because these are unemployed people in Romania, so it's not like they're leaving their job as the rocket scientist to come and collect, pick oranges in the orchard or something. So I'd certainly query what is skilled labour. There's a whole bunch of, again, obfuscation and lies in the middle of that. But anyway, out of the close to 4.5 million last year, you're looking at give or take 2 million are supposedly coming for work. Now, again, not including Ukrainians and or Belarusians, as a part of this wider war that's going on at the moment. Something around 1.2 million are supposedly coming in as family reunion. Now, if you look at the source of the family reunion, it's all, or pretty much all, people from Islamic countries that are part of the family reunion, which comes back to this thing that and the Indians as well, is that the Islamic people love this idea. You get just one member of the family into a Western country, then they can bring the whole fucking village over to the country, and this is something that they think they're entitled to do, and they're encouraged to do it by United Nations and globalist agitators. Something around 600,000 are coming in for education. Now, this is supposedly the opposite, say, in Britain, where it's alleged that 70% plus of the people coming in are coming in for education, whereas in the continent, it's something like 12 to 13%. In Europe, there's something like only 12 to 13% are coming in for education. Why is that? Why is there such a huge difference in the amount of mass migration to Britain? Is allegedly nearly all education, primarily education, whereas in Europe it's the smallest portion of the mass migration. So that doesn't really add up. Why is Britain attracting so many more? Certainly not the high quality of the education system, far from it. Maybe it's because of the low quality. Everybody gets a degree, and so why don't you come along to get the in our degree factories? Whereas in Europe, maybe there are still some standards of educational excellence are being applied, although I wouldn't think so. Then the balance, the rest of them, which is about 1 million, which is various categories of seeking asylum, is again about 1 million people in 2023 came into, allegedly, into Europe seeking, this is the European Union, of course, seeking asylum. That's a lot of people there seeking asylum. But there are various categories of asylum, suggesting that a lot of these asylum claims are very dubious and unsupported. Someone turns out without any documentation they've clearly used to get through numerous countries, and you pass through 10 countries to get to one country, and you say, I'm here for asylum. Well, what about those 10 countries you pass through? So those claims, I think, are quite dubious. Now, here's another category that, again, you have to sort of do some number crunching to find this. But in Europe currently, and this is only for 12 the year, so there's probably more than this, I'm sure there are 500,000 people who have overstayed their work or tourist visa, and have overstayed it by quite some months. And again, that's only for the last 12 months. If you look at and for some reason, there's a very small number of these people who overstay their visas get caught. Like about 5% of them, 6% of them get caught and deported. Many of these have human rights groups, NGOs, that have got legal stays so that the government can't. So the amount of illegal migrants, if you look at illegal entries of, say, 400,000 plus, and then you look at the overstays, this is per year, 500,000 plus, and then you look at the backlog of cases and so on, you're looking at millions of illegals there, if you include visa overstays and work permit overstays. And the EU seems to have little interest in really deporting these people. So you can reasonably assume that the majority of those will stay. And the ones, interestingly, the ones that they're targeting for deportation are not as you would imagine, that the criminals, although some of them in there, the ones they're targeting for deportation, interestingly, are the white people. And if you're white and you're well qualified, you'll get deported. But the illiterate peasant from the third world who's overstaying won't. That seems to be how it works there. So now, just on the thing of work, the majority of work permits, nearly all of them, are given out to illiterate peasants, and the work visas they're given are skilled labour. Now they're saying, well, these people have skills that the economy needs. Well, no, they don't. there are claims that people who've got diplomas in aged care, and they've got them at some African or Indian non-existent college, so they're supposed to be highly educated in aged care. They've had no. I mean, these colleges don't exist. It's all a fucking scam. It's just a labour hire. A device to move peasants into the West. And I think the Western authorities, the EU authorities, know this perfectly well, but they don't care. It just looks good on paper. Yeah, skilled labour. Oh, these people, PhDs. Ooh. But in fact, it's nothing of the sort. They're just bringing out illiterate peasants who've never had a job in their lives and bringing them out to the West. I mean, why? I mean, for goodness sakes. And why tell so many lies about it? What's the purpose of trying to conceal this and cover it up? I mean, no wonder the globalists are losing ground electorally. Why? If what you're doing is so good, why tell so many lies? I mean, for goodness sakes, why work so hard to conceal this treachery that they're engaging in? So I don't believe that the workers, over 2 million came in last year. This is to the European Union. I mean, if even a fraction of those were actually qualified in anything at all, I'd be surprised. I would think if it's anything like the Australian numbers, I'd say out of those 2 million, there'd be less than 100,000 who have any useful qualification of any sort and speak at least enough of the language to get by. The family reunion thing of 1.2, 1.3 million is a massive scam and should be stopped immediately. The education thing, again, a lot of these education things, as we're finding in Australia and Britain, is they're run by Indians and Pakistanis and Africans, Nigerians, and so on. They have these fake bullshit colleges. If I want to start up an educational institution, I have to really, go through. I've got to jump through a million hoops to do it. But if you're black and brown and you don't really speak any English, there seems to be a vast public service bureaucracy across the West that just hand it to you as a gift. And so you can claim you're running a school, then you can import vast numbers of illiterate peasants, and pretend you've given them diplomas and so on. And then suddenly they're allowed to stay in the West as educated new citizens. I mean, it's a fucking scam of monster proportions. And again, hundreds of thousands of people are streaming into Europe using this scam. Now, the last thing is the asylum. Every single person who comes in to Europe or Australia or America or wherever, has not only passed through numerous safe countries where they could have claimed asylum in any one of those countries, but also every single, and we need to really remember this, every single one of them could have gone to a refugee camp run by the United Nations and various NGOs that are funded by the United Nations, where they could have got free shelter, free food, free medical and dental care, water, clothing, everything given to them for free, living a much higher standard of living, materially at least, much higher standard of living than they would have had wherever they've come from. And they could have stayed there until the situation settled down in wherever they'd originally come from. And maybe it was a famine, maybe a civil war, maybe it was anything, it doesn't matter, but they could have stayed there, absolutely free. But instead, no, they decide, I'll travel through 10 safe countries, 15 safe countries to get to the rich West and claim asylum. Now, all these claims should be rejected. Not one that maybe the claim has some merit, but they still had to, either they could have gone to the refugee camp, which they chose not to, or they went to and then they were encouraged by globalist agitators to make the journey to the West through the massive infrastructure the globalists have created to move vast numbers of people around illegally. Or they, again, could have claimed asylum in any one of those other countries, but they did. So there is not one legitimate asylum claim amongst those million claims last year. So really, out of the 4.5 or over 4 million people that are there, or 4.7 odd million if you include the visa overstays, they'd be lucky if there'd be 100,000. Lucky if you'd find 100,000 legitimate migrants in that group. So that's the extent of the scam. I just wanted to illustrate it. That is the extent of the scam. There is more than 4 million people came in. This is not including Ukrainians, by the way. More than 4 million people came into Europe, the European Union last year, and only a tiny proportion of those, 5%, 6%, 7% tops, are even approaching approximate legitimacy. And if you really want to nail it down to totally legitimate reasons and qualified people and that sort of thing, it's not even 100,000. That's the extent of the scam. So more than 4 million people have scammed their way into Europe, being aided and abetted by the globalists and the useless European Union government. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.